on agriculture, especially in technological inputs into agriculture, science, space, and some of these areas which could help growth going forward. Generally, the incentives for investments into the capital markets are welcome because that will divert investment from gold, which has become quite high in the last couple of years, and that will also help improve overall investments into the productive parts of the economy. I think the tax administration reform the finance minister suggested is welcome. Currently there are a lot of negative perceptions both globally and in India because of actions taken by the tax authorities and the fact that the GAR provisions are going to be made into law, the provisions that they announced from the Shom Committee through the finance bill is also extremely welcome. I now request Chris Gopalakrishnan, our President-designate, to make his points, and of course Ajay Sriram, our Vice President, will make his points, and then we can take some questions and answers.
Let me focus on some of the things which Ari did not cover. First point I want to make is 2% of CSR from PSUs and private sector companies now can be spent on incubators, combined with listing of SMEs without IPO, pass-through status for angel investors, MSME benefits to continue for 3 years after the limit has been crossed, funding for SIDBI. So I feel that there is a lot of encouragement for innovation, incubation, small and medium enterprises, angel investments and things like that. I think it's very good for creation of new companies. From the IT sector itself, regulation that GAR will be incorporated into the Income Tax Act. The Culture Committee report will be implemented and they will be finalized. All these are actually very good from an IT services sector. Yeah, from an IT services sector. I will pass this on to Ajay.
Thanks. I just would like to mention a couple of points. I think frankly, the starting point of the speech when he talked about the issue of people want jobs, I think that's a very positive start, which actually is catching the pulse of the majority of the population of India. Similarly, social schemes, the allocation has gone up, which is also a very desirable direction for the country like India. Mr. Adi Gordage talked about the agriculture sector, but just to elaborate a little more, where the allocation has gone up by 22% to 27,000 crores. I think credit to farmers from 5,75,000 crores to 7 lakh crores is a good direction because this credit is really required at the farming level. Crop diversification is being encouraged. Nutrient-based crops are being encouraged. And in some of these details are very desirable. Watershed management, that's another area which is moving well. Second, then we talked about farmer-producer organizations. This is a very positive step where these organizations become like small cooperatives of farmers who have a better position for either purchasing side or selling side. So that's a very positive direction where the government would help fund setting up the farmer-producer organizations. That's a good direction. If I mention the second point which we talked about is the infrastructure sector. That has been given tremendous focus, which is the requirement for a country like India for economic growth. Focus on the CCI under the Prime Minister. That's again coal. If you look at India, today India is the 5th largest reserves of coal, but we are still importing over 100 million tons as mentioned by the Finance Minister. I think looking at PPP projects for improving the coal availability in the country rather than having to import, I think that's a good direction also. Overall, definitely is an inclusive budget for development. But the one question which we were discussing, which is still not 100% clear, is that the total plan, the total expenditure is going up by about 2 lakh crores, whereas the indirect and direct taxes are not showing that it's going to reach this 2 lakh crores. So maybe there is still the fine print of the budget, which will come out with what is the situation on subsidies, what is the situation on some other areas. I think once we see that, we'll get to know. But this increase in expenditure and where it's funded from, I think that's something we still have to understand.
Any points?
Nothing really to add, excepting for saying that from CII, the budget has been extremely, it's been welcomed. We find that it's not a big bang sort of a budget, yet it really addresses some of the most critical issues that has been really spoken of. We were talking about a growth-oriented budget. We see this to be a growth-oriented budget with focus on investment and infrastructure adequate. And we are also really looking at fiscal, which the finance minister very clearly said that it is under control. The other sector, which I just wanted, other sectors having been covered by the three office bearers, I just wanted to touch upon one sector which we have noted very presently is the focus on the small and medium enterprises. And I think the focus that the finance minister has put on a growth orientation for the small and medium enterprises is extremely important. And we have seen also a mention of the GST, its roadmap. I think that also gives it's a very positive signal, and therefore this budget, we are getting out of this budget with a very positive frame of mind, a very positive sentiment, which is a key takeaway from this budget. Any questions?
Yes, he has spoken about this voluntary compliance of this service tax. Do you see it as a positive move? Because I mean, these type of schemes have come in for some sort of criticism.
No, I think since a lot of people have not filed their returns, this is a good move to ensure that a larger number of people come into the service tax net. One of the important things he has mentioned even in the economic survey is that the tax base should be broadened. And I think this is a step to that direction.
Yes, please.
Yes. How do we see the step to increase tax on rich people? He has imposed 10%.
Well, since it is for 1 year, we feel it's a reasonable move towards fiscal consolidation.
Yeah. One by one, please. Let's.
Will that help to bring down the fiscal deficit?
Yes, certainly. Any tax collection will help. I don't think it will solve the fiscal deficit problem, but we expect that there must be, which we have not mentioned in this speech, there must be a considerable curtailment of the subsidies and or a large disinvestment program. Those details are still not available. When we go into the detail, we see it. But if the fiscal deficit is contained at 4.8%, with these measures for development and inclusiveness, we would welcome the overall budget.
Yes.
Do you think the finance minister would have been a little more imaginative about expanding the tax base? You see more services in the negative tax list now, and that could have perhaps helped in.
Well, it's difficult to think how that can really be done, but that's a matter of the tax administration using information technology to try and see that the tax base is expanded. If it is done in a sensible manner, and I think his proposal to study, to have a study done on tax enforcement methods in the tax department, I think may lead to that.
So, it was predicted that economy would go to 6.6.
This budget is definitely growth oriented. So growth will be better next year, we feel, than in this financial year. Secondly, it also depends on when the goods and services tax can be implemented. If it can be implemented midway during the year or sometime during the year, that will add considerably to growth. Because the GST, in our view, will add 1.5 to 2 percentage points to GDP growth immediately it is introduced. So when it is introduced will also matter. And certainly I feel this move towards GST and the present proposals will lead us to a high growth rate in 14-15, definitely.
So, do you think so? It is this 6.57% was predicted because of this? He is going to implement that?
I think that in the economic survey was clearly a result of what he knew would be the budget proposals and the GST proposals.
Yes, please.
Is there anything
specific in the budget which is for consumption. It's for consumption.
I think some of these expenditures that are made in the rural areas, agriculture, agricultural development, indirectly all of that can spur consumption. And one of the very good points he has announced is that before the UPA term is over, he wants to ensure that the direct subsidy procedures are put into place. I think that will save subsidies, direct subsidies will, direct benefit transfer. And I think that would aid consumption in the country also, if done well.
Yes, please.
What do you think was missing in the budget?
Well, I think it's difficult to say. I think it's a very analytic budget. I think I would like to compliment the finance minister and the team in the finance ministry. There's not much one can find fault with in this budget.
Sir, recently CI have mentioned about the alternative minimum tax for SMEs, which you wanted that the government should exempt them from this tax. So I just want to understand, this thing was not mentioned in the budget. So what is your reaction on this?
I think there are many things which are not mentioned in the budget speech. When we see the detailed budget, we'll come to know. And we are meeting the finance minister on the 4th. And if there are any major suggestions to be made in improving the budget proposal, we will certainly do it at that time. But not everything comes out in the budget speech. So until we see the entire document and have it studied, which will take a couple of days, it will be difficult to comment on every point.
Sir,
I think we need to finish
one
with
thing,
the last question.
Chris, sir. Sir, particularly for IT perspective, means again UP is there and pressure is there. What do you think? Is there anything particularly for IT sector, and what do you expect it should also be there, sir?
So clearly, the Renkachari committee report we mentioned, and that it will be implemented. Second, I talked about incubators. And how the CSR, 2% CSR money can be actually routed to the incubators. That definitely will also help incubate, IT sector, because a lot of these incubators are IT incubators. So that will also help. So definitely, and then you also talk about higher allocation to the National Innovation Council. So all those things I think are going to be beneficial to the.
These are indirect benefits.
So you
directly only GAR is there.
They are waiting with
Directly only GAR is there.
Yeah, because what IT sector is looking for was actually stability and consistent implementation. So you talked about tax reforms and things like that. So I think it is a very good budget for that. Thank you.